Big 12 Conference is the day. Basketball school. Kansas Jayhawks is the first team we're going to do. 3-9 is my projection. Don't like them, just like I don't like them any other year. Third year here for David Beatty. Best player, Loquavante Gonzalez at the wide receiver position. 62 catches last year, 729 yards, 3 touchdowns. Favorite player for this team. Steven Smith, another good wide receiver, 72 catches, 859 yards, 7 touchdowns. Watch out for him. Returning 4 of 5 offensive linemen. I like that. Octavius Matthews and it is the guy slated at the running back position. Taylor Martin, another guy who got some playing time last year, 335 yards, 4 touchdowns. Octavius Matthews is a JUCO transfer. Peyton Bender, transfer from Washington State, is slated as a starting quarterback. Carter Stanley did throw for 959 yards, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So maybe a little bit of a quarterback battle there, but I look at Bender to get the job. Defensively, they've got a couple of good prospects on the defensive side of the ball. When you talk about Lawrence Armstrong and Daniel Weiss, Armstrong had 10 sacks last year, 56 tackles. Weiss, 38 tackles, 3 sacks. Mike Lee is the safety. He had 77 tackles last year in interception. He's a huge piece of the team. And then linebacker-wise, Keith Lonecker had 43 tackles last year. He should be a key tackler this year. Hadn't made a bowl since '08. Hadn't won more than 3 games for sure in the last 5 years. Iowa State I've got slated at 4-8. Second year for Matt Campbell. We'll see what he can do in his second year. Showed a little bit of promise last year. Beat Kansas and Texas Tech, 2 good wins. Kansas isn't a good win, but it's a good win if you're Iowa State, who's been 3-9, 2-10, 3-9, 3-9 in the last couple of years. In a league where the Big 10 or the Big 12 has 10 teams, and the bottom 2 teams are Iowa State and Kansas every year. They're definitely separating themselves more than Kansas is from one of those bottom teams. But the Cyclones, so something I love to see that I'm just flabbergasted by, their quarterback Joe Lanning is slated as their starting middle linebacker. I love it. He's made a switch. He's became a dog. He switched over to the defensive side of the ball. He's a senior this year. He said, I don't really have a chance to become a quarterback in the NFL, so I won't be a linebacker. So we'll see what he does at linebacker this year. That's fun. Jacob Parker is the quarterback, obviously. He was a better let me see here. Yeah, he's a better thrower. I don't want to be wrong here. Better thrower than Lanning. Lanning did have 11 touchdowns on the ground last year. Parker threw for 1,791 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Key here for them this year is Alan Lazar. What is his? He's a key prospect for the NFL. What kind of season does he have? 69 catches, 1,000 yards last year, 7 touchdowns. Deshaun Jones, another good player, 37 catches, 567 yards, 6 touchdowns. We'll see if he can do good off of the extra attention to Lazar. Matt Eaton, a top JUCO, is another wide receiver to look at. Offensive line-wise, I'm real concerned. They're only returning 1 guy, and he's a sophomore, their center. Running back, David Montgomery, sophomore, and Mike Warren, who's a junior. Mike Warren was more of the starter last year, but both of those guys had over 500 yards, and they combined for 5 touchdowns. One had 3, one had 2. Warren definitely, and they both were good in the receiving game. So, both these guys will be parts in the offense. I don't know how much time they're going to have, and what kind of holes will be created with this with this new offensive line. And then defensively, Will Harvey's back, their top tackler, 78 tackles last year. He's one of their linebackers. Like I said, Joel Lanning, middle linebacker. Everett Edwards, 52 tackles last year, interception. Secondary-wise, Brian Peavy, 62 tackles, 11 passes blocked. DeAndre Payne, 44 tackles, 7 passes blocked last year. And Kamari Cotton Moya, 73 tackles and 2 interceptions. Some good pieces in their secondary, and then they do struggle a bit on the on the defensive line. Not a lot of returning starters. Jaquan Bailey, only returning starter on the defensive line. We'll see how that pans out against the other good offensive lines of the Big 12, which I don't think will bode well. Like I said, 4-8 is my projection. 5-7 for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Cliff Kingsbury's seat is hot, but I don't really know who's going to fill the spot. So I don't know how far or where he's going to go, or I know he wouldn't go someplace else. I see him as he's the guy. He's when I was a kid, he played quarterback there. He's throwing bombs to Wes Welker. Playing fucking Clemson in the AT&T singular bullshit bowl. I'm not talking about a good bowl. I'm talking about one of those first, bowls. I remember them playing Clemson. And thing about Texas Tech and when Cliff Kingsbury was there, always exciting games. It was high scoring games before it was high scoring games. Back to the shit show of Texas Tech. When are they going to start getting some defensive prospects? Well, Colin Hill, he transferred over from Notre Dame. But other than that, Jordan Brooks, 86 tackles. 1 sack last year, best defensive player on the team. Ja'Shawn Johnson, 77 tackles, 2 interceptions. One of the best players in their secondary, best player in their secondary. Kyshawn Allen, 43 tackles. BJ Polite Bray, he had 30 tackles. Some other guys in their secondary, and then they kind of do struggle at the defensive line position. And Dakota Allen, another linebacker who will be coming back. Vontae Hinton, another linebacker that will be coming back. They didn't, play a whole lot last year, play a little bit. But the offense, Jonathan Giles, he transferred out. He is now at LSU. He is not eligible to play this year, but he is gone. That was your best wide receiver. Now, I guess it's okay to lose your best wide receiver when you have other good wide receivers. Kiki Kuti, Dylan Cantrell, Derek Willis, Cameron Batson, all good players. Willis is more of like tall, lanky guy. And Cameron Batson's your speedy little slot guy. Cantrell's your white boy. He can go up and get it like a baller, because he's 6'3", but, when he gets to the NFL, he could be more of the Wes Welker type. And then Kiki Kute is more of a smaller guy. They'll probably score a lot of long touchdowns like they always do. Nick Shimonik, this kid I think will be good. He's threw for 464 yards, 6 touchdowns, and an interception last year, and a little bit of time that he got to play. I think he'll be good. And running back wise, the running backs really don't have to do much. DeMarcus Felton, DeLon Ward, Justin Stockton, all 3 of the running backs that they used last year will be back. And offensively, this team will be right where it's at usually. But it's the real question is defensively. How much can their defense hold up? And only returning 2 offensive linemen also. And like I said, 5-7 is kind of what I predict for them. Baylor, I got Baylor going 5-7. I think Matt Rule's a really good hire for them. He's going to be a really good coach. To give him a couple of years to get his type of talents in here. Transfer Anu Solomon, I think really fits his system a little bit better than Zach Smith. Zach Smith did get to take over last year for Seth Russell. He did throw 1,526 yards and 13 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And so, he did show some promise. They didn't win any games late in the season, though. I will say that. They did have some tough opponents late in the season. I will say that. Terrence Williams is back. Terrence Williams, 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. He's a good player. JaMycal Hasty is another real good player. I think he got hurt preseason, though. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really know. I thought he got hurt, though. Wait, let me look. Is that him that... I might be thinking about somebody else. Yeah, I think he got hurt. But anyways, like I said, on the new Solomon or Zach Smith is a toss up. I think they should go with Solomon. I like Solomon when he played on a good team when he was at Arizona, but Zach Smith, hadn't done nothing wrong yet, so you can't really fault him. Wide receiver wise, I like the wide receivers that they have. Blake Lynch and Chris Platt. Chris Platt, 35 catches, 567 yards, 4 touchdowns. Blake Lynch, 34 catches, 404 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then Pooh Strickland, another player that they got coming back. Tight end Jordan Fennerbacher. He's a senior. We'll see what he can do. 3 offensive linemen are returning. Defensively, secondary, Devon Hall, a senior. 52 tackles, an interception last year. Trevon Blanchard, 73 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 1 interception. Taylor Young, a senior, 93 tackles, 4.5 sacks. Clay Johnson starting at middle linebacker. He got to play a little bit last year. He's a little Abilene, Texas prospect, or Abilene, Texas product. Tyrone Hunt, another good defensive lineman, KJ Smith, another defensive lineman, KJ Smith had 67 tackles, 7 sacks last year. Watch him this year also. I got them going 5-7, tough year. Beating the teams they should beat, losing to the teams that they should lose to. West Virginia, the Mountaineers. I really like the transition that they've made since they came over. They usually overachieve each year. 10-3 last year was real good. I was surprised because Skylar Howard did good, but he looked like someone that could get shaky and make a lot of mistakes. Will Greer is there now. He's a transfer from Florida. I liked him when he was at Florida. I knew that he was going to not play last year, behind Howard. And I don't even know if he could play last year. But, yeah, I think we'll have an all right year. Justin Crawford, he's a senior. He's one of my favorite running backs. I like Justin Crawford a lot, NFL prospect. He's good at catching the ball at the backfield. Kennedy McCoy, another good running back that they have. He's a sophomore. I look for him to take over once this year's over. I think he'll have a solid, campaign this season to get him ready for the next year. Devon Durant, Karan White, 2 really good wide receivers. Karan White, obviously, brother of Kevin White. He's the wide receiver, Karan. Kyle Bosch and Colton McKevitz, the 2 offensive linemen that are returning. And then defensively, and then, we'll see what happens with this team. Not a whole lot of returning starters on offense or defense. I got them going 6-6. I think, like most things, I think they'll beat the teams that they should beat. I think they'll lose to the teams that they're going to lose to. I have them losing to Virginia Tech at the first of the year. I think that's going to be, a tough game for them. First game of the year with all these new players. But I see them getting on like a little bit of a roll, and they have a bye week. Big game against TCU. I have them slated to lose it, but that's going to be a big game. And then you got your Texas Tech and your Baylor the weeks after that, and then you play a lot of tough teams other than Iowa State to end the year. Got them at 6-6. Adam Schuler, best defensive lineman, 33 tackles last year and a sack. David Long, a good linebacker, 65 tackles, 2 sacks. Al-Rashir Benton, their best tackler, best player on defense, 80 tackles last year, interception. Kaiser White, real high prospect, NFL draft-wise, 58 tackles and 3 sacks last year. Also a brother of Kevin White, who plays in the NFL for the Chicago Bears. Defensively, Trayvon Askew-Henry, he's back. He had a knee injury last year, so he didn't get to play, but he's a good free safety. Watch him. Hopefully he can lead the secondary because the secondary is young. Some good talent, though, for West Virginia that I do like. Kansas State's one of those teams that best special teams in the nation. Bill Snyder, one of my favorite coaches. He's just a wizard. Defensively, they're returning a good amount of 6 starters on defense. They are missing a couple of good players that did get a lot of tackles for them last season. DJ Reed, their cornerbacks, their leading tackler, coming back, 75 tackles, 16 passes blocked, 3 interceptions. Real good talent, DJ Reed. Watch out for him this year. Duke Shelley, another good cornerback. He had 48 tackles and 3 interceptions. Also, guys in their secondary, Kendall Adams, he's returning. He had 62 tackles and 2 picks. And then Elijah Walker. Elijah Walker's not a returning starter. He's a JUCO transfer that we ought to watch out for, though. Their linebackers, they're returning. There's no returning linebackers. That's honestly a weak spot for them. I'm looking at Trent Tanking, a senior. I think he's going to have a good year. I think he's going to really take over, getting a lot of tackles. Defensive line wise, Will Greer and Reggie Walker are the 2 guys. Walker had 6.5 sacks last year, 39 tackles. Greer had 45 tackles and only 1 sack though. Offensive wise, they're not going to throw the ball a whole lot. Brian Pringle is a good kick returner. He's had 39 catches, 631 yards, 4 touchdowns. Look for him to be their top wide receiver this year. This is one of the teams that do use their fullback. Winston Dimmel, Winston Dimmel is the fullback. His dad is the head coach. He does not the head coach. His dad is the offensive coordinator, and his dad does feed him a lot. He had 12 touchdowns in the 12 touchdowns last year. He only ran for 97 yards on the year also. So he's a guy that they give to right on the goal line, kind of in those, those big power sets that they do. Jesse Ertz, he's a big runner. He's a quarterback that's a good runner. Over 1,000 yards last year, 12 touchdowns on the ground. And then Ertz threw for 1,755 yards, 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He needs to continue to keep a ratio like that, about a 2-to-1 ratio on interceptions. He's not going to throw a whole lot. This is definitely a running team, returning 4 offensive linemen, which is huge. Dominic Heath is another wide receiver that is returning. He had 45 catches, 483 yards, and a touchdown. A young guy to watch out for who was a freshman last year, Carlos Strickland, another wide receiver. Running back-wise, Alex Barnes and Justin Silman will be the guys. Dalvin Warmack, another guy. It's going to be a bunch of different guys for them this year. I see, but probably Alex Barnes' most 442 yards, 6 touchdowns last year. I got them going 9-3. A solid campaign. I think that they're similar to like the Kansas City Chiefs, where they really rely on their defense. Make them make turnovers. Don't make turnovers. And then, rely on your defense to force turnovers and then, capitalize on them. I think this is going to be a year where they do that well. I see them losing, to a team like at Texas. I have them losing at TCU at home, at Oklahoma at home. But I got them going 9-3 on the year, having a pretty good season. Texas, I got Texas having honestly a pretty good year, 9-3. Losing to USC early in the year at USC, I don't think they're going to be ready for that game. I think USC is a little bit ahead of schedule right now than them. I see them losing the Red River showdown again. It's a tough game for them. Oklahoma usually gets the better of them. Oklahoma looks real good this year. The only thing that I don't know about for Oklahoma is Lincoln Riley. And then, I got them beating Oklahoma State, and I got them losing to TCU, though. Shane Boucher, their quarterback, he's going to be the guy. Hopefully he doesn't get knocked around too much. He did show some signs of, concussed when he got knocked around last year, and he really didn't even get hit that hard. And he's a pretty small dude, so we'll see if he can stay in the pocket, stay good. He's going to have a good offensive line, 4 returning starters. Another Abilene product, Jake McMillan, plays for this team. Colin Johnson, a sophomore wide receiver, is someone to watch. Amani Foreman, brother of Devontae Foreman, still plays on this team. He's a good prospect. Devin Derovny, a sophomore, he was a freshman last year. He's going to be another good player. Devaney had 20 catches, 412 yards, three touchdowns. Armani Foreman, 34 catches, 420 yards, 3 touchdowns. They spread the receiving around a lot to a lot of different people. John Butt was supposed to be a guy or John Burt was supposed to be a guy that was supposed to be good last year, and he had a kind of a down year, dropped a lot of deep balls. Gerard Hurd, he was a former quarterback, supposed to have, he's supposed to have a better year this year, 24 catches, 266 yards, 3 touchdowns. Colin Johnson, 28 catches, 315 yards, 3 touchdowns. They're expecting better years from a couple of these guys. I think Boucher will be a little bit more ahead this year than he was a freshman last year. And if he does get hurt, watch out for Sam Ehlinger, Westlake product, to get some time playing. I think he's a good dual threat quarterback. Chris Warren's the guy at running back. I think he's going to have another good year, a similar year to Foreman's type year. Maybe not as good, because Foreman had a really dominant year. That's not going to happen every year, but I think Chris Warren will have a good year. He's a big back, and then they're going to have other guys. Kyle Porter. They'll bring in some other, Kyle Johnson, Tristan Houston, some other running backs that they have up their sleeve that'll get some playing time. I like Texas this year. I like the hire of Todd Herman. At times, I kind of said, I don't know about Herman. Give Charlie Strong one more year. I think he's about there. But Texas fans, they're fast. They move fast. If you're not 10-2, then it's not right. And 6-7, 5-7, 5-7, 3 years in a row ain't gonna get it done. TCU, this is a team that I was a little bit lower on, and I've came to be a little bit higher on them now with the amount of returning starters that they have. 17 returning starters, 10 on offense, 7 on defense. And more importantly, the starters that they're returning on defense are vital starters. On the defensive line, they do struggle there. They don't return as many. L.J. Collier does return only 21 tackles, but 4.5 sacks last year. With that, Matt Boshin, right in, he's a senior, and he had 29 tackles but 6 sacks last year. Good season from him. Linebacker-wise, they're good. Ty Summers had 121 tackles and a sack and a half last year. Travin Howard had 130 tackles and a sack and a half last year, and they were returning both those guys. I think that is vital when you're returning that many of your tacklers. And they really did have a tough year last year. Lost 3 close games. And those close games they probably lost because Kenny Hill threw 20 interceptions. So. I mean, he even threw 20 interceptions on the year last year, so that's an exaggeration. But, he threw a lot of interceptions. Okay, so let's not forget about secondary here. One of the top secondaries in the nation. I don't know if, just looking at it, like Ranthony Tejada, he only had a pick last year, but 46 tackles. I know he's a good cornerback. He's a senior this year. Jeff Glandley, a sophomore, 46 tackles last year. Pretty good player. Tejada actually also had 2 sacks last year. Nick Orr, 86 tackles and 4 picks. One of the top players on this defense. And then Nico Small. Nico Small had 83 tackles and 2 picks last year also. So, safety-wise, this team is stout. I like Tejada at cornerback. Gladney's only a sophomore. So I like this defense, the back end of this defense. One of the biggest complaints for Gary Patterson last year was, they're a young team, and they're returning a lot of guys this year. And then, it's not just the defense, the offense. Returning 4 offensive linemen, which I think is vital. Sean Nixon, a guy that really didn't even I don't even know if he played last year, but he's supposed to be a real good wide receiver for them. John Darce, the LSU transfer, he had 33 catches for 442 yards, 3 touchdowns. Taj Williams was their best receiver last year, 39 catches, 702 yards, 5 touchdowns. Kyle Hicks had 47 catches, 417 yards, 2 touchdowns. And that's their running back. And then Kevon Turpin, a real good return man also. He had 30 catches, 295 yards, and a touchdown. He's more of the return man guy. But he's going to be a better slot receiver type this year. Kyle Hicks is a guy I really like at the NFL level. He rushed for 1,000 yards last year, 12 touchdowns, and he also, like I said, his receiving yards wasn't bad either. 417 yards, 47 receptions. Kenny Hill did rush for 1,000 yards on the ground, or he rushed for 813 yards on the ground, 10 touchdowns. And he threw for 3,208 yards, 17 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. His interceptions have to come down, but he's a senior this year. You know, I look for him to be the guy. There's not really anybody else that's going to be taking a spot or anything like that. I want to see what type of year he has. He could have a really good year. He could have a really shitty year. The pieces around him are set. It just depends on if he brings it or not. He's a key piece. I don't trust him. I've seen him fuck up like 3 years in a row. For his, whatever team he was on, if it's A&M or if it's TCU, basically like he's good until they get that first loss, and then like it's like over. It's like he's like so concerned on getting like a perfect season or something, and then like it's just over at that point. All right, so Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is one of the teams that I don't really look at as they're not my they're not like the favorite, but they have some good players on their team. One thing I don't like they do have three offensive linemen returning. That's not bad. Wide receiver wise, they're stacked. James Washington, one of the top wide receivers in the nation, all Big 12. Marcel Aitman was hurt last year. I think he's going to bounce back with a good year. Chris Lacey was a guy that produced for him last year. We'll see if he gets some time this year. Jalen McCleskey, a real good slot receiver. 73 catches, 812 yards, 7 touchdowns. Washington, 71 catches, 1,380 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's deadly. Keenan Brown is a real good running back or wide receiver. He's a good prospect, I'd say. He hadn't done anything stat-wise. But we'll see how he does. Justice Hill, sophomore running back, he shared a lot of time last year with a couple of other different backs, Childs and Carsons, Barry Sanders Jr. He did gain the most yards, though. He had 1,187 yards, 6 touchdowns, and I liked him the best out of the running backs last year. Obviously, they liked him the best too. He ended up becoming the starter later in the year. I like him to have a real good season this year. Mason Rudolph, you look at his numbers, and his numbers are amazing. 4,000 yards and then 28 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. This guy done turned the ball over. When you think about Mason Rudolph, you don't really think about how good his stats are. We'll see if he can produce it again this year. He'll climb up draft boards if he has another good year like this. And I think he honestly can do it. The big thing with them this year is defense. What will the defense be like? They have Chat Whitner, and then that's their best linebacker that they have. Justin Phillips is another guy. He had 42 tackles last year. Kenneth Edison McGruger had 40 tackles last year. Some other linebackers. We'll see if they can fill the spots. They were not starters last year. They did get playing time last year, obviously, with the 40 tackles. Jared Owens and Cole Waltersheed are the defensive linemen. They both had 2 sacks last year, about 25 tackles each. The secondary now, they do have really good safeties. I like Trey Flowers, and I like Raymond Richards. 64 tackles and 3 interceptions for Richards, and Flowers had 61 tackles, no picks. But both of these guys are some good talent. And then they have Adrian Baker, a grad transfer from Clemson in the secondary. Watch him. And then sophomore Madre Harper. This defense is going to be the key to this team. I got them going 10-2 though. I have them losing at Texas. That's always a tough game for them going in to Austin. And then I have them losing at home to Kansas State later in the year. I actually have them slated to beat Oklahoma though. They get Oklahoma at home this year, so I got them going 10-2. I got Oklahoma going 10-2 on the air. I got them. The biggest thing is, how's Lincoln Riley going to be this year? Lincoln Riley has been a very good offensive coordinator. I really like what he's brought to the team. Bob Stoops wouldn't leave if he didn't think he had a good guy there to lead the team. But, that's a lot of pressure. This was at a point where, Stoops has been, 11-2, 11-2, right there on the cusp of making it to the, championship, and, he hadn't got there. And, I don't know if he stepped down because he wanted to, step down for a year, let things cool off and then go elsewhere, Urban Meyer, or, he's just ready to take a break. He's done. He's been a coach for 19 years. But Lincoln Riley's first year, I want to say Oklahoma's going to win the Big 12, with the talent that they have, the team that they have, but I don't know how they'll react without Stoops, and if they don't do well, then it's going to be, well, it's Lincoln Riley. So, we'll see what happens with this team this year. I think they will lose to Ohio State early in the year. Hopefully that'll be the shock that gets them going. And then I see them beating Texas, like I said, have them losing to Oklahoma State, at Oklahoma State, and then winning out. Got them going 10-2 on the year. Really solid defense. Defensive line, DJ Ward, he's a senior. We'll see what he can do. He had 28 tackles last year, a sack. Neville Gallimore, 40 tackles and a sack last year. We'll see what he can do. Two of their best players on defense, Emmanuel Beal, 81 tackles last year, 2 sacks. Obina Ogbonna Okoronkwo, butchered the hell out of his name, but he's a hell of a player. 71 tackles, 9 sacks last year. He's a top prospect for the NFL draft. I really like this kid. I think he's going to be a key for this team. Caleb Kelly, he's a sophomore. Watch him at linebacker also. Secondary wise, real stout. Jordan Thomas, Stephen Parker, Jordan Parker. Jordan Parker's a sophomore. The other guys are seniors. These guys are tenured. They're ready. Stephen Parker had 63 tackles last year, 2 picks. Jordan Thomas had 49 tackles, 17 passes blocked, and 2 interceptions. And then Jordan Parker had 36 tackles last year. Really like this defense. All right, so my main reason that I really like this offense, though, returning all 5 offensive linemen. Austin Seibert's back. Austin Seibert's been a solid kicker. He was 11 for 16 last year. His long's only 39. He's an all-right kicker. Mark Andrews, really good tight end, top prospect in the draft. Marquise Brown, a young player, JUCO guy that they got. Watch him. And then Jeffrey Mead. I think Jeffrey Mead's going to fill the D.D. Westbrook spot. Him and Badgett might share it. You know what I mean? They both might have some good stuff. He's the Kentucky transfer that they got. He's a senior. I think, these receivers will have a good year. A.D. Miller, another receiver that will probably catch some patches. Dimitri Flowers is their fullback, one of the top fullback prospects for the NFL. Baker Mayfield's a hell of a player. He's really fun to watch. He scrambles all over the place. And he gets it done. He's a fiery little dude. I've always been more of a Texas guy, so I've never really, liked Oklahoma, but Baker Mayfield's one of the first quarterbacks I will say that I've actually liked, that plays for them. Maybe it's because I know he's a Texas kid that, he didn't get any, scholarships from UT, so, he has the big FU to them, but he did go to Tech, so you know what I mean. Like, it's not like Oklahoma was his first choice or whatever. But Baker Mayfield's a real good quarterback. I think he's a Heisman prospect. I think he's going to really lead this team well this year. I think it's going to be one of those. A lot of times there's juniors that they look good and they could go to the NFL at this point, but they have another year, so they stay another year. And they look like a man among boys, and I think he'll look like a man among boys this year. Running back-wise, Rory Anderson, a sophomore, real good guy. Abdul Adams, another real good running back. They're gonna do real good this year. I'm not too worried about him. Marcelius Sutton, JUCO transfer. Watch him. Another running back that they have. With the offensive line, this is kind of like the Wisconsin team. With having your complete offensive line back. It doesn't really matter who your running back is. They're gonna run the ball pretty well. You're gonna look good. And I have them projected to go 10-2. They're gonna represent. Well, they're gonna have to play in the Big 12 championship game. It's like I've got like a basically, in the way standings would go, I think I have like a three-way tie between Texas, Oklahoma State, and TCU. Regardless, I don't know who's going to get into the championship game. I'm not going to scratch my head and try to pick, who I think is going to be. I would say it'd probably be TCU or Oklahoma State if I had to choose a team that they would play. But regardless, the reason I don't really care about who it was going to be because I think Oklahoma's going to win regardless. Oklahoma's one of those teams, like I was saying earlier in another one of my videos, more of the talented teams take over at the first of the year. Well, I feel like they're one of the more talented teams, but I don't know if they're as talented as Ohio State. But I think one thing that Oklahoma is really good at is by the end of the year they build enough chemistry and they become a great team. They might not drop the game against Oklahoma State. They may win out after losing to Ohio State. Win the Big 12 championship game and then squeezing into the playoffs. And I think that's a possibility. But like I said, I think Oklahoma will win the Big 12 championship game. They are supposed to have a championship game this year, and I slate them to win it. But that's my Big 12 preview.